The brown leather portfolio was on the seat beside her when she sat down, and Mrs. Tola Mensa was 42 minutes from her apartment in Crooked Creek before she realized it did not belong to the Indigo Route 8 bus. It belonged to a man. The man was gone. The brown leather portfolio was zipped, soft from use, with a small brass key still in the zipper pull and a single thread of charcoal gray wool from a tailored suit caught on the buckle. Mrs. Tola Mensa was 27 years old. She was a widow. She was the mother of an 8-year-old African-American boy named Akwasi Kobina Mensa, who lived on a tandem T-Slim X2 insulin pump that cost his mother $1,847 a month in supplies. Her husband, Specialist Kobina Mensa of the United States Army 1st Cavalry Division, had been killed in action in Kandahar Province in November of 2018, 3 months after Akwasi was born. She had carried a small, folded color photograph of Specialist Mensa in the inside pocket of her purse for 7 years. The young man across the aisle had watched her see the portfolio. He was perhaps 23, in a dark hoodie, scrolling on his phone. He looked at her. He looked back at his phone. He did not look up again. The teenage girl 2 rows ahead in pink jelly sandals and a Beatles t-shirt whispered to her seatmate, "She gon' pocket it, watch." The bus driver, Mr. Fitzwilliam Seeley, 11-year Indigo veteran, 61 years old, glanced once in his rearview mirror at Mrs. Tola Mensa and the brown leather portfolio. He did not say anything. He kept driving. In the wheelchair seat at the front of the bus, 6-year-old Mickey Loveridge, in a small Indianapolis Colts sweatshirt and a small dark blue lap blanket, looked over his small shoulder at Mrs. Tola Mensa and the brown leather portfolio on the seat beside her. His large, dark brown eyes were quiet. He smiled at her. He turned back to face forward. She lifted it. It was heavier than it looked. The leather was warm where it had been against the seat back. She unzipped it carefully. Inside there were 3 things: a single white business card for Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft, Chief Executive Officer, Queen City Trust and Savings Bank of Indianapolis, 90 Monument Circle, with a cellular number printed in small, dignified type at the bottom. A small, folded piece of plain white paper, blank, and a single cashier's check made out in slow, careful Spencerian script to cash, dated this morning, drawn on the Queen City Trust and Saving Cash account number 0049 in the amount of $20,000.00, signed by Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft himself in slow, careful blue fountain pen ink. Mrs. Tola Mensa closed the portfolio. She zipped it. She turned the business card over in her hand. She did not look at the young man in the hoodie. She did not look at the teenage girl in the Beatles t-shirt. She did not look at Mr. Fitzwilliam Seeley in the rearview mirror. She looked at the brown leather portfolio for the slow, careful length of 3 blocks. Then she pulled the yellow cord. The bus slowed at the Crooked Creek Transit Station. She stepped off. She walked across the lit parking lot to the small 24-hour 7-Eleven on the corner of West 71st Street and Michigan Road. And she walked inside, and she went to the back counter where the slushy machine hummed and the payphone hung on the wall, and she dialed the cellular number printed on Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft's business card. A man's voice answered on the second ring. The voice was careful. The voice was used to receiving important calls. The voice said, "Eldon Ravenscroft." Mrs. Tola Mensa said, in her own slow, careful Ghanaian Indianapolis English, "Sir, I found your portfolio on the Indigo Route 8 bus. I am at the 7-Eleven at the Crooked Creek Transit Station. I will wait for you here for 1 hour. Please bring identification. I would like to make sure I am returning it to the correct gentleman." There was a long pause on the line. Then Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft said, very quietly, "Madam, I am 11 minutes away. I will bring identification. Please do not move from that 7-Eleven. Thank you." She hung up. She bought a small bag of plain potato chips with 37 cents from the bottom of her purse. She sat down on the small concrete planter outside the 7-Eleven door. She held the brown leather portfolio in her lap with both hands. She waited. The October Indianapolis afternoon light came in slow, careful gold over the Crooked Creek Transit Station parking lot. She did not know on the small concrete planter at the 7-Eleven that Friday afternoon that her phone call to Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft had reached him precisely 14 minutes after he had finished writing the cashier's check at his desk on the 47th floor of the Queen City Trust and Savings Tower, on the morning he intended for the 17th consecutive year to drive the cashier's check personally to the Indianapolis Children of Fallen Soldiers Fund offices on the East Side as his annual private gift, in the memory of his only son, First Lieutenant Wilkin Eldon Ravenscroft, 24th Infantry Regiment, killed in action in Diyala Province, Iraq, on October the 17th of 2008. She did not know that. She knew only that the brown leather portfolio belonged to a man and that the man was coming. Tola Mensa had not, in 7 years, returned a thing she had found. She had not, in 7 years, had to. A widow on $14.20 an hour with an insulin pump child does not find things. The lost and found of working poor America is a small lost and found. She had once, in 2023, found a $20 bill folded in the Riley Hospital cafeteria women's room sink basin. She had set it on the small chrome counter beside the basin for the next woman. She had not pocketed it. Mama Akua Mensa had taught her in 1998 at the small departure gate at Kotoka Airport in Accra, when Tola was 4 years old and a Sierra Leonean man's small leather wallet had been lying open on the small gray waiting room bench beside the gate, that the river that picks up what is not its own becomes the river that loses what is its own. Mama Aqua had picked up the wallet. Mama Aqua had walked it to the airline agent's counter. The Sierra Leonean man had returned, frantic, 11 minutes later. The wallet had still been there. He had wept. He had given Mama Aqua a small wooden-carved Sierra Leonean elephant the size of a thumb. He had said, in slow, careful Creole Ghanaian English, that he would never forget the small Ghanaian woman who had returned his small wallet on his last day in Accra. Mama Aqua had said only, "It was not mine, sir. Travel well." She had walked Tola, 4 years old, to the small departure gate. Tola had carried the small wooden elephant in her small fist all the way to Indianapolis. She had carried it since in the inside pocket of every purse she had ever owned. It was in her purse on the Indigo Route 8 bus on the afternoon she found the brown leather portfolio. The small wooden Sierra Leonean elephant was the size of a thumb. She had not, in 7 years, taken it out. Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft was 54 years old that October Friday. He stood 6 feet 1 inch tall. He had close-cropped silver hair, calm gray eyes behind small gold-rimmed reading spectacles, a clean-shaven jaw, and he wore on the afternoon of the 24th of October a charcoal gray tailored Brooks Brothers 3-piece wool suit over a crisp white dress shirt with mother-of-pearl cufflinks his wife Cordelia had given him on their 25th anniversary. He drove a slate gray 2018 Volvo XC90 SUV. He had taken Lieutenant Wilkin Eldon Ravenscroft to his first Indianapolis Indians game at the old Busch Stadium in 1994, when Wilkin was 9. He had driven Wilkin to Fort Benning in August of 2006. He had driven home from Wilkin's funeral at Crown Hill Cemetery in October of 2008 in this same Brooks Brothers wool suit. He had worn the suit since 2008, only on the 17th of October each year. He had been on his way that Friday afternoon to the East Side offices of the Children of Fallen Soldiers Fund. He had set the brown leather portfolio on the seat beside him on the Indigo Route 8. He never drove on the 17th. He always rode the bus the way Wilkin had ridden the Indigo as a boy. And he had stepped off at the Fall Creek station to buy a small bouquet of yellow chrysanthemums from the Yellow Pot florist on East 16th Street. He had left the portfolio on the bus. He had not noticed. He arrived at the Crooked Creek 7-Eleven at 4:43 in the afternoon. The slate gray Volvo pulled up at the curb. He stepped out in the charcoal gray Brooks Brothers wool suit and the small gold-rimmed reading spectacles. Mrs. Tola Mensa, on the small concrete planter in her dove gray Riley Hospital cafeteria scrubs and a navy windbreaker, stood up. She held the brown leather portfolio in both hands. "Madam Mensa," said Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft. "Mr. Ravenscroft," said Mrs. Tola Mensa. She did not smile. She did not extend a hand. She held the portfolio. "Sir, may I see identification?" He took out a small black leather wallet. He removed his Indiana driver's license and his Queen City Trust and Savings Executive Identification card. He handed them across. She looked at the driver's license. She looked at the photograph. She looked at the name. She handed both cards back. She handed him the brown leather portfolio. "Sir," she said, "inside the portfolio there is one cashier's check drawn on Queen City Trust and Saving Cash account number 0049 for $20,000 made out to cash. There is one business card with your name. There is one small folded piece of plain white paper that I did not unfold. I did not remove anything. I did not photograph anything. I called you only because the business card had a cellular number on it, and I did not wish for the portfolio to spend the night on the Indigo bus." Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft unzipped the portfolio. He looked inside. He looked at the cashier's check. He looked at the small folded piece of plain white paper. He closed the portfolio. He looked at Mrs. Tola Mensa. "Madame Mensa," he said, "you returned a $20,000 cashier's check made out to cash, drawable on demand, no questions asked, at the teller window of any Queen City Trust and Savings branch in Indianapolis. You returned it on a Friday afternoon to a 7-Eleven parking lot. You returned it from a Carter System bus to a man you had never met. You returned it without taking the small bag of potato chips out of your hand to set the portfolio down. Why?" "Sir," said Mrs. Tola Mensa, "it was not mine. I have my own work." He looked at her for a long, careful 3 seconds. He looked at the dove gray Riley Hospital cafeteria scrubs. He looked at the small red ID lanyard at her throat with the small Riley Hospital photograph. He looked at her left hand. He looked at the small worn gold wedding band on the third finger. He looked at the small black canvas keyring hanging from the navy windbreaker pocket, at the small dark blue Riley Hospital pediatric wristband stamped with the small block letters Mensa, Aquasi K, and a small barcode. He said very quietly, "Madam Mensa, may I offer you a small reward? A token, $5,000, from my personal account, not from the bank, because I would have lost $20,000 I owed to the Indianapolis Children of Fallen Soldiers Fund this afternoon if you had not called." "No, sir," said Mrs. Tola Mensa. "Thank you. It was not mine. I have my own work." "Madam Mensa, the $5,000 is a tax-deductible gift from me to you. It will not embarrass anyone. It will help you with—" He paused, and his eyes went again to the small Riley Hospital wristband on her keychain. "With the small one you carry on your keys." "Sir," she said, "I appreciate your kindness. I do not accept rewards for returning what is not mine. My mother, Mrs. Akua Mensa, taught me this when I was 4 years old at Kotoka Airport in Accra. I do not break a teaching of my mother. Forgive me. My bus to the second job is at 5:17. I would like to be on it. Thank you for coming for your portfolio. Have a good evening, sir." She turned. She walked back to the bus shelter. She did not look back. Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft stood at the curb with the brown leather portfolio in his left hand and his Indiana driver's license still in his right hand. He watched the small, dove-gray, scrub-clad woman walk to the bus shelter. He watched the small, dove-gray, scrub-clad woman get on the Indigo Route 26 bus 11 minutes later. He watched the Route 26 bus pull away from the Crooked Creek Transit Station. He sat down on the small concrete planter where she had been sitting. He looked at the brown leather portfolio in his lap. He opened it. He looked at the small folded piece of plain white paper He unfolded it. The piece of plain white paper had 4 words on it in Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft's own slow, careful blue fountain pen ink, written that morning at his desk on the 47th floor before he had folded the paper and placed it in the portfolio with the cashier's check. The 4 words read, "For widows like hers." Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft sat on the small concrete planter outside the Crooked Creek 7-Eleven for the slow, careful length of 9 minutes. He did not move. The October Indianapolis afternoon light came in slow, careful gold over the parking lot. Then he stood. He closed the brown leather portfolio. He walked to the slate gray Volvo. He drove. He did not drive to the East Side offices of the Indianapolis Children of Fallen Soldiers Fund. The East Side offices would still be open Monday. The $20,000 would be wired Monday. He drove instead to the Riley Hospital for Children main campus on West Drive on the Indiana University Medical Center grounds, and he parked in the visitor's deck, and he walked to the cafeteria on the 2nd floor of the Riley Outpatient Center building, and he bought a small turkey sandwich with whole wheat bread and a small cup of beef barley soup and a small carton of skim milk and a small slice of cherry pie from the dove gray scrub-clad cafeteria server at the hot food line who was not Mrs. Tola Mensah, because Mrs. Tola Mensah's shift had ended at 3. He came back at 11:40 the following Tuesday. The lunch line was busy. The dove gray scrub-clad cafeteria server at the hot food line was Mrs. Tola Mensah. She did not recognize him. He was in a soft, pale blue cotton and linen blazer over a plain white t-shirt and worn khaki trousers and brown loafers, with the gold-rimmed reading spectacles in his blazer pocket. He looked like any other grandfather who had come to the hospital cafeteria with a sick grandchild upstairs. He bought a small turkey sandwich and a small cup of beef barley soup and a small carton of skim milk. He thanked her. He sat at a small table by the window. He ate slowly. He watched over the slow, careful 40 minutes of his lunch, the small, dove-gray scrub-clad woman behind the hot food line. He watched her with the children. He watched her with the parents. He watched her with the small bird-bone elderly volunteers who came down for their free hospital meals. He watched her smile at the small 4-year-old African-American boy in the small blue dinosaur sweatshirt and the small white IV pole who came through with his mother. He watched her press, very quietly, an extra small carton of chocolate milk into the small 4-year-old's tray without ringing it up. He came back Wednesday. He came back Thursday. He came back Friday. He came back the following Tuesday. He came back the following Wednesday. By the 2nd week, Mrs. Tola Mensah had noticed him also. She had not recognized him from the 7-Eleven. The soft, pale blue blazer was nothing like the charcoal gray Brooks Brothers. The clean-shaven jaw was the same. The calm gray eyes were the same. The hands were the same. But the man who came to the Riley Hospital cafeteria for the small turkey sandwich was a different category of man from the man who had stepped out of the slate gray Volvo at the 7-Eleven. And Tola was tired, and small Aquazi had been up with the small tandem insulin pump alarm on Tuesday night at 1:40 and again at 3:52, and the small, careful association between the soft, pale blue blazer at the small cafeteria window table and the charcoal gray Brooks Brothers at the 7-Eleven parking lot was not, at that moment in the 2nd week of November, a connection her tired Tuesday afternoon mind was looking for. She had only noticed that he came every weekday. She had only noticed that he was kind. She had only noticed that he tipped $4 in singles into the small, clear Riley Hospital pediatric oncology donation jar at the end of the line every time. She had said on the small Wednesday afternoon of the 2nd week in her slow, careful Ghanaian Indianapolis voice, "Sir, thank you for the small kindness. The donations help Madame Hortense's small friends." He had said, "You are welcome, ma'am. They are small kindnesses. I have small means." He had not been telling her the truth about the small means, but he had also not been lying. The small means he had been speaking of were the small means with which he had been caring for 17 years the small grief of his only son's Class A uniform on the kitchen table chair in August of 2006. Those small means were small. They were a man's portion. He had spoken truly. She had not heard the small, careful truth in his answer. She had only heard the soft, pale blue voice. She had said, "Yes, sir. Enjoy the soup." By the third Thursday, the 74-year-old white widow who came every weekday for the soup and half sandwich combination, Mrs. Hortense Bellwether, retired Indianapolis Public Schools librarian who had buried her husband, Mr. Roger Bellwether, in 2018 and had eaten lunch at the Riley cafeteria every weekday since because the noise of the children reminded her of the school library. Mrs. Hortense Bellwether had noticed the soft, pale blue blazered older gentleman who had begun, 3 weeks earlier, to come for the small turkey sandwich. She said that Thursday, sitting at the small table beside his, "You've been coming a while now." "Yes, ma'am," said Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft. "My name is Hortense Bellwether. Is your grandchild upstairs?" "No, ma'am, I have no grandchild. My only child passed at 23. I am very sorry." "Thank you." "Then why are you here, sir? Forgive me, I am old. I ask the impertinent questions." Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft looked across the small formica table at the small white-haired woman. He looked at the small dove-gray scrub-clad woman behind the hot food line. He said, very quietly, "Madam Bellwether, I am here because the woman at the hot food line returned a brown leather portfolio to me 3 weeks ago that I had left on the Indigo Route 8 bus. The portfolio contained a $20,000 cashier's check made out to cash. She gave it back. She would not accept a reward. I have come here every weekday since to learn what kind of woman returns $20,000 she could have walked away with. I am still learning, Madam Bellwether. I have not finished learning." Mrs. Hortense Bellwether looked across the cafeteria at the dove-gray scrub-clad Mrs. Tola Mensa. She looked back at Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft. She said in her clean, careful Indianapolis librarian voice, "That is Tola Mensa, sir. Her husband, Specialist Kobina Mensa, was killed in Kandahar province in 2018. Her son, Akwasi, is 8 years old. He is a type 1 diabetic. His insulin pump supplies cost his mother $1,847 a month. She works the lunch shift here and the night shift cleaning offices at Sunrise Janitorial Services from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. Tuesday through Saturday. Her apartment in Crooked Creek is $812 a month. Her son lives with her neighbor, Mrs. Joelle Ozua, during the night shift. I learned these things, sir, because I have eaten lunch at this cafeteria every weekday since 2018, and Mrs. Tola Mensa has worked the hot food line every Tuesday through Friday for the last 3 years. I have asked her the same impertinent questions I asked you. She answered them. She did not lie." Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft set down his small turkey sandwich. He looked at Mrs. Hortense Bellwether. "Madam Bellwether," he said. "Thank you. I had not asked." "You will, sir, in your own time. Drink your milk before it warms." He drank his milk. He thought that night at home in the small library of 4011 Sunset Lane in Meridian, Kessler, of the small folded piece of plain white paper with the 4 words in his own slow, careful blue fountain pen ink. "For widows like hers." He thought of Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft in the next room with the small Wedgwood teacup and the open volume of Wendell Berry. He thought of First Lieutenant Wilkin Eldon Ravenscroft at the kitchen table of this same house in August of 2006 in his new Class A uniform, smiling. He thought of Specialist Kobina Mensa, whom he had never met, standing somewhere in Kandahar province on the morning of November the 11th, 2018, 11 years and 25 days after Lieutenant Wilkin had stood somewhere in Diyala province on the morning of October the 17th, 2008. He thought of small Akwasi Kobina Mensa on the tandem T-Slim X2 insulin pump that cost his widowed mother $1,847 a month. He went to bed at 11:40. He could not sleep. He came downstairs at 1:12 in the morning. He sat at the small writing desk in the library. He took out his pad and his slow, careful blue fountain pen. He wrote a letter to his trust attorney, Mr. Dorian Lockwood Vance of Lockwood and Vance Trust Services at 25 West Maryland Street, Indianapolis. He sealed it. He drove to the small Lockwood and Vance offices at 6 in the morning. He left the letter under the front door. He drove to the Riley Hospital cafeteria. He bought a small turkey sandwich and a small cup of beef barley soup. He sat at the small table by the window. He ate. He watched Mrs. Tola Mensa at the hot food line. He did not introduce himself. He went home. Mr. Dorian Lockwood Vance called at 9:11. The terms were drafted by Friday. Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft signed them at 3 that afternoon in the small Lockwood and Vance conference room. Mr. Atticus Sherborne, the 62-year-old African-American chair of the Queen City Trust and Savings Board, was present and witnessed the signatures. So did Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft, who had read the draft 3 times the previous evening at the small library writing desk, and had wept very quietly at the line concerning the small folded piece of plain white paper. The Mensa Ravenscroft Trust was established that Friday afternoon at 4:12. It held in escrow with Lockwood and Vance the sum of $400,000 in Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund holdings, plus a separate revolving line of credit drawable monthly for the documented insulin pump supply and pediatric endocrinology, costs of 1 Akwasi Kobina Mensa, age 8, of 7218 Avalon North Drive, Crooked Creek, Indianapolis. The trust would convert on Akwasi's 18th birthday to a 4-year fully funded undergraduate tuition trust at any accredited 4-year university in the state of Indiana. The trustee was Mr. Dorian Lockwood Vance. The trust was named for Specialist Kobina Mensa, 1st Cavalry Division, KIA Kandahar Province, November 11, 2018, and 1st Lieutenant Wilkin Eldon Ravenscroft, 24th Infantry Regiment, KIA Diyala Province, October 17, 2008. Mrs. Tola Mensa was at the hot food line at 11:46 on the morning of Monday, the 17th of November, when Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft came through the line in the soft pale blue blazer for the 11th time. He carried a small cream manila envelope. He did not get a tray. He waited for Mrs. Tola Mensa to finish serving the small 4-year-old in the small blue dinosaur sweatshirt and his small white IV pole. He stepped to the side of the hot food line. He said, in his quiet, careful Brooks Brothers Indianapolis voice, "Madam Mensa, may I speak with you for 3 minutes? I will not keep you long. The lunch line is moving." Mrs. Tola Mensa looked at him. The slow, careful Ghanaian Indianapolis eyes went, for the first time in 11 visits, from his soft, pale blue blazer to his clean-shaven jaw to his gold-rimmed reading spectacles in his blazer pocket. The recognition came up slowly behind her eyes. "Mr. Ravenscroft," she said. "Madame Mensa." She set down her small steel serving spoon. She washed her hands. She walked to the side of the hot food line. She said quietly, "Sir, 3 minutes." "Madam Mensa," he said, "I am the chief executive of Queen City Trust and Saving Bank of Indianapolis. You knew that on the 7th of October. You returned my portfolio. You did not accept a reward. I have eaten lunch at this cafeteria for 9 of the 11 weeks since because I wanted to know what kind of woman returns $20,000 she could have walked away with. I have learned," Madam Bellwether told me. "I did not ask you. I will not ask you to confirm any of it. I have spoken with my trust attorney. I have established the following." He handed her the cream manila envelope. "Inside," he said, "is the executed paperwork for the Mensa Ravenscroft Trust. The trust contains $400,000 in escrow and a revolving credit line that will pay the documented cost of your son's insulin pump supplies and his pediatric endocrinology appointments at Riley Hospital from this day forward through his 18th birthday, at which point the remaining balance will convert to a 4-year undergraduate tuition trust. The trust is irrevocable. It is in your son's name. You are not the beneficiary. He is. The trust is named for your late husband, Specialist Kobina Mensah, and for my late son, First Lieutenant Wilkin Eldon Ravenscroft. You will find a small folded letter inside the envelope explaining why. I do not expect you to thank me. I do not require you to thank me. I will not return to this cafeteria after today. I would like only, when you have read the letter, for you to come to the Queen City Trust and Savings Tower at 90 Monument Circle on Wednesday morning at 9. I have an offer to make you that has nothing to do with the trust and nothing to do with the $20,000 and nothing to do with what I owe you. You may accept it or you may refuse it. If you refuse it, no consequence will follow. If you accept it, you will report to the 43rd floor, the Community Banking Division, as a community relations analyst at a starting salary of $58,000 a year, with full medical, dental, and life insurance benefits, plus a $4,000 annual professional development allowance. The position is yours by my offer. You will not need to apply. You will not need to interview. You will need only to show up. Madam Sherborne in the Community Banking Division knows you are coming or knows you may be coming. The decision is yours. He looked at her. The gold-rimmed reading spectacles caught the cafeteria light. Thank you, Madame Mensah, he said. Thank you for returning my portfolio. I will go now. Forgive me for taking your 3 minutes. He turned. He walked out of the cafeteria. He did not come back to Riley Hospital for the 11 subsequent weeks until Mrs. Tola Mensah herself, in a cream skirt suit, walked through the cafeteria one Tuesday at 11:40 in February of 2026 and bought a small turkey sandwich and a small cup of beef barley soup and a small carton of skim milk and a small slice of cherry pie from the new dove-gray scrub-clad woman at the hot food line who had taken Mrs. Tola Mensah's old job, and sat down at the small table by the window where Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft used to sit, and waited. Mrs. Tola Mensah read the letter that Monday afternoon on the small concrete planter outside the 7-Eleven at the Crooked Creek Transit Station. The letter was 3 small pages of slow, careful blue fountain pen ink on cream paper. It explained that Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft's only son, First Lieutenant Wilkin Eldon Ravenscroft, had been killed in Diyala Province, Iraq, on the 17th of October 2008, at the age of 23. That every year on the 17th of October, Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft had drawn a $20,000 cashier's check on his personal account and had driven it personally to the Indianapolis Children of Fallen Soldiers Fund offices on the East Side anonymously as his small annual private gift in Lieutenant Wilkins' memory. That Specialist Kobina Mensah's name was on the small bronze plaque at those Children of Fallen Soldiers Fund offices because Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft had paid for it to be added in 2019, anonymously as part of his small annual private gift in 2018, the month after Specialist Kobina Mensah's name had been published in the Indianapolis Star Casualty List. That Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft had not known, when he wrote the check that Friday morning, that the widow of Specialist Kobina Mensah would be the woman who would find the portfolio on the Indigo Route 8 bus. That if she had been any other woman returning any other portfolio, Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft would have sent her the $5,000 reward she had refused and would have driven on. That the 4 words on the small folded piece of plain white paper had been written that morning before either of them knew of the other. That the 4 words had been for widows like hers. That a widow whose husband had been killed for the same flag as Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft's only son had returned the $20,000 meant, in part, for her own widow's fund. That Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft had not known what to do with that fact for 11 weeks. That the trust was what he had decided to do. That the job at the Queen City Trust and Savings Tower was what he had decided to offer. That she was free to refuse all of it. That if she refused it, he would, by way of small private penance, continue the $20,000 annual gift in Specialist Mensah's name and would never trouble her again. Mrs. Tola Mensah folded the 3 small pages of cream paper. She put them back in the cream manila envelope. She put the envelope in her purse beside the small folded color photograph of specialist Kobina Mensah. She walked to the Indigo Route 26 bus shelter. She rode home. She picked up small akwasi from Mrs. Joelle Ozua's apartment at 6:15. She made small akwasi his small dinner of chicken and jollof rice. She gave small akwasi his evening insulin dose at 7:22. She read small akwasi the small Magic Treehouse book at 7:45. She turned off small akwasi's bedroom light at 8:10. She walked back to the small kitchen of the small apartment at 7218 Avalon North Drive in Crooked Creek. She sat at the small Formica table. She took the cream manila envelope out of her purse. She read the letter again. She read it a third time. She did not weep until the third time, and then she wept very quietly so as not to wake small Akwasi. She went, on Wednesday morning the 19th of November, to the Queen City Trust and Savings Tower at 90 Monument Circle. She took the elevator to the 43rd floor. She wore the soft, pale violet cotton blouse and the dark navy slacks that Mrs. Hortense Bellwether had insisted on bringing to her at her apartment the previous afternoon. Because, sister, no woman of Gaina should walk into a bank tower in scrubs on a Wednesday morning if she has any choice about it. She carried the cream manila envelope. Mr. Atticus Sherborne, the 62-year-old African-American board chair of Queen City Trust and Savings, met her at the elevator. He shook her hand. He walked her to the corner office of the Community Banking Division. Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft was waiting at the small, round conference table by the south window in the same Brooks Brothers wool suit he had worn at the 7-Eleven 11 weeks earlier. He stood when she came in. He said, "Madam Mensah." She said, "Sir, I have read the letter. I have one condition." "Tell me." "I will accept the position at $58,000 a year and full benefits as a community relations analyst on the 43rd floor. I will report Monday at 8:30 a.m. I will work my notice at the Riley Hospital cafeteria for 2 weeks. I will not abandon Madame Hortense and the small 4-year-old with the white IV pole without proper handoff. The Sunrise Janitorial Services night shift I will end immediately. That is one condition." "Yes, Madam Mensah." "The trust for my son Akwasi I will not accept as a gift to me. I will accept it only as a survivor benefit to him, payable directly to Riley Hospital Pediatric Endocrinology and to Lockwood and Vance Trust Services, not passing through my hand. The trust is in Akwasi's name, you have told me. I would like the documentation to make that explicit. I would like the trustee, Mr. Lockwood Vance, to communicate directly with Dr. Aurelia Hatch Strand at Riley Pediatric Endocrinology. I would like a copy of every invoice and every disbursement to come to my address at 7218 Avalon North Drive in Crooked Creek for the rest of my son's eligibility. I do not wish to touch the principal. The principal belongs to him. If he chooses at 18 to use it for college, he will use it. If he chooses at 18 to use it to bury me, he will use that. The principal is not mine. That is the second condition." "Yes, Madam Mensah." "Thirdly, sir, the Mr. Kobina Mensah Memorial Veterans Widows Fund. The 4 words on the small folded piece of plain white paper. I would like, when you and I have established it together as the new public face of your annual private gift, for the fund to begin at $100,000 per year. Not $20,000. $100,000. I will work in this office to raise the other $80,000 a year. From depositors, from local community banking partners, from the small businesses we work with on the 43rd floor. I will work, sir, until the fund clears $1 million per year by the 5th year. I will not ask Queen City Trust and Savings to fund it from operating revenue. I will raise it. That is the work I am taking the position for. Is that understood?" Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft looked at her. The gold-rimmed reading spectacles caught the south window light. He said very quietly, "Madam Mensah, yes, it is understood. Then I will start Monday." "Welcome, Madam Mensah." She started Monday. On her first Monday morning at 8:28 at the elevators of the 43rd floor of the Queen City Trust and Savings Tower, she met a slight tall woman in a navy pinstripe suit and small steel reading glasses. The woman was Mrs. Coletta Sherborne, 63 years old, the African-American senior vice president of the Community Banking Division, the cousin by marriage of board chair Atticus Sherborne. Coletta Sherborne had been informed on Wednesday afternoon at 4:18 that the new community relations analyst was a former Riley Hospital cafeteria server with no banking experience whatsoever and a starting salary of $58,000. Coletta Sherborne had not been pleased. Coletta Sherborne had said so in slow, careful Indianapolis Black Business School English to Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft on the 47th floor on Wednesday at 4:26. Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft had said in his quiet Brooks Brothers voice, "Coletta, give her 6 weeks. If she has not earned her seat by 6 weeks, you and I will revisit. 6 weeks. That is all I am asking." Coletta had given her 6 weeks. Coletta had also given her, on Monday morning at 8:29, the slow, careful elevator look of an old hand judging a green hire. Tola had said, "Good morning, Madame Sherborne. Thank you for the opportunity. I will work hard for you. If at any point I am not earning my seat, please tell me directly. I will not waste your time." Coletta had looked at her. Coletta had said, "Madame Mensa, 8:30 a.m. at the small North Conference Room. Bring a pen. Bring a notebook. We will start with the small, careful Indiana Federal Community Reinvestment Act compliance reports for the last 7 quarters. We will read them together. We will see what you see. We will see what you do not see. Welcome to the 43rd floor." By the third afternoon, Coletta Sherborne had revised her opinion. Tola had, in the third quarter's compliance report, noticed a small $30,000 variance between the bank's reported low-income mortgage origination volume and the underlying transaction-level data. The variance was not a fraud. It was a small clerical mistake in the central data warehouse. It had been in the report for 14 consecutive quarters. Coletta Sherborne had not caught it. The chief compliance officer had not caught it. No one had caught it. Tola had said in her slow, careful Ghanaian Indianapolis voice, "Madam Sherborne, forgive me. I think there is a small numbering error on page 11. The 30,000 on the table at the bottom does not roll to the 30,000 on the table at the top. May I check the source data?" Coletta had said, "Madam Mensa, check the source data." Tola had checked. Tola had been right. Coletta had sent a small memo to Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft on Wednesday evening. The memo had been 1 sentence long. It had read, "Eldon, 6 weeks is too long. She's earning her seat by Friday. C.S." Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft had read the memo at the small library writing desk at 4011 Sunset Lane on Wednesday evening. He had handed it across to Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft. Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft had read it. She had smiled the slow, careful first smile she had smiled since the 17th of October, 2025. She had said, "Eldon, I would like to invite Madam Mensa and her son to Sunday lunch." "May I?" "Yes, dearest," she had. Mrs. Tola Mensa and small Akwasi Kobina Mensa had come for Sunday lunch at 4011 Sunset Lane on the first Sunday of December. Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft had cooked a small roast chicken with small carrots and small parsnips. Small Akwasi, 8 years old, had asked Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft at the small dining room table, "Mr. Ravenscroft, were you my mom's friend before, or did you become her friend after the bus?" Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft had set down his small silver fork. He had looked across the small dining room table at the small 8-year-old African-American boy in the small navy sweater and the small white shirt and the small bow tie and the small tandem T-Slim X2 insulin pump clipped to the small belt at his small waist. He had said very quietly, "Akwasi, I became your mother's friend after the bus. The bus was the beginning. Some friendships have a small, clear beginning that you can name. The bus is ours. Will that do for an answer? Yes, sir, said Small Aquasi. That will do. Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft passed a small plate of small carrots across the table. Mrs. Tola Mensa took a small, careful spoonful. The four of them ate. The small dining room at 4011 Sunset Lane in Meridian Kessler had not held four people at the table since October the 17th of 2008. Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft, who had been a woman of three at that table for 17 years and a woman of two at that table for the 17 years before that, was a woman of four again, and she did not weep, and she did not name it, but she set out the small Wedgwood teacup for the small one of the four and poured the small Aquasi a small cup of warm, sweet milk tea, and she said only, Aquasi, drink your tea. It is the small good kind. She raised the first $100,000 in the first quarter on the strength of a single carefully written letter to 46 community banking partners across central Indiana. She raised $230,000 in the second quarter. She cleared $300,000 a year in the second year, $490,000 in the third, $740,000 in the fourth, and the full $1 million in the fifth on the strength of the small, careful Lockwood Vance veteran widow vetting process that she designed in her first 6 months. The fund dispersed grants to 412 veterans' widows in the state of Indiana between February of 2026 and February of 2031. 2 of those grants paid the insulin pump supplies of 2 specific type 1 diabetic children whose fathers had been killed in Helmand Province in 2012 and in Pech Valley in 2015. Mrs. Tola Mensa wrote both small grant award letters herself by slow, careful blue fountain pen ink on cream paper. Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft retired from Queen City Trust and Savings in March of 2029. He came to the small retirement party in the 43rd floor Community Banking Division conference room. He wore the same Brooks Brothers wool suit. He stood at the small podium. He said, Madam Sherborne, Madam Mensa, friends. I would like to thank Mrs. Tola Mensa for returning my brown leather portfolio on the Indigo Route 8 bus on Friday, the 24th of October, 2025. I would like to thank her for showing me, over the slow, careful 4 years since, what was on the small folded piece of plain white paper. The paper said, for widows like hers. I had thought when I wrote it that I was writing about her. I had not understood at the time that I was also writing about Cordelia. Madam Mensa, your work has been the work of my retirement. Thank you. He stepped down. He walked across the conference room. He shook Mrs. Tola Mensa's hand. He went home. Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft passed in his sleep at 4011 Sunset Lane in Meridian Kessler on the night of October the 17th, 2031. He was 60 years old. Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft, beside him, woke at 4:12 in the morning and called Lockwood and Vance and then called Mrs. Tola Mensa. Mrs. Tola Mensa drove from Crooked Creek at 5:06 in the morning. She sat with Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft on the small front parlor settee at 4011 Sunset Lane until Lockwood and Vance arrived at 6:41. The small private service was held at Crown Hill Cemetery the following Wednesday. Mrs. Tola Mensa read the small folded letter aloud at the small graveside. She read the 4 words, for widows like hers. She closed the letter. She handed it back to Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft. Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft did not weep. She had been weeping very quietly for 6 days. She nodded. Aquasi Kobina Mensa was 13 years old that October. He stood beside his mother in his small dark blue Sunday suit. He held his mother's hand. He had been wearing the Tandem T-Slim X2 insulin pump for the slow, careful 8 years that Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft had been paying for. He had not met Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft. He had wanted to. The schedules had not worked. Now they would not. He stood beside his mother at the small graveside. He looked at the small bronze plaque set into the small granite headstone. The small bronze plaque had Mr. Eldon Ravenscroft's name on it and First Lieutenant Wilkin Eldon Ravenscroft's name on it, and the four words underneath, in slow, careful Roman letters. For widows like hers. There is an old saying in Ghana that Mrs. Akua Mensah had taught Tola at 4 years of age at the small departure gate at Kotoka Airport in Accra. The saying goes, "The woman who keeps what is not hers keeps the small handful of grain for 1 week, and then the small handful of grain is gone and her hand is also gone. The woman who returns what is not hers keeps her hand. The hand is what matters. The hand will be needed for the work that comes later. The grain is not the matter. The hand is the matter." Mrs. Tola Mensah, 27 years old, on the Friday afternoon she found a brown leather portfolio on the Indigo Route 8 bus, was 33 years old on the morning she stood at the small Crown Hill graveside with her 13-year-old son in his small, dark blue Sunday suit and read the four words from the small folded letter aloud to Mrs. Cordelia Ravenscroft. She is 36 years old now, and she sits at her desk on the 43rd floor of the Queen City Trust and Savings Tower at 90 Monument Circle in Indianapolis. The Mr. Kobina Mensah Memorial Veterans Widows Fund disbursed $1,400,000 in grants last year. The small bronze plaque at the Indianapolis Children of Fallen Soldiers Fund offices on the east side now has two names side by side on it. The small folded letter sits, framed in slow, careful glass, on the small wall behind her desk. Every morning at 8:22, she takes it down. She reads the four words. She puts it back. She begins her work. Akwasi Kobina Mensah is 16 years old now. He is a junior at North Central High School. He plays second chair clarinet in the school marching band. He has been accepted conditionally on the Eldon Ravenscroft Scholarship for Veteran Sons that his mother quietly founded in 2032 to begin pre-med studies at Indiana University Bloomington in the autumn of 2034. He has worn the Tandem T-Slim X2 insulin pump for 8 years. He has never paid $1 of it himself. He carries, in the small inside pocket of his small school backpack, the small wooden Sierra Leonean elephant his mother gave him on his 13th birthday at the small Crown Hill graveside the morning he read the four words on the small bronze plaque aloud. The elephant is the size of a thumb. He carries it everywhere. It is his small, careful inheritance, his mother has told him, from a Sierra Leonean man at Kotoka Airport in Accra in 1998, who taught his grandmother Mama Akua a small, careful thing about hands and grain. He has not yet asked his mother to tell him the full story. He is 16. There is time. There is patience. The river waits at the bend. Would you have returned the $20,000 on the bus, or would you have walked off at your stop and not made the phone call? Tell us in the comments below where you would have stepped off. The hand is the matter. The grain is not the matter. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to this channel and tell us where you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.